Well, hey, y'all. Joseph, welcome to the Oak Grove podcast, our first official full episode with Pastor Beth, our very own Dr. Beth LaRocca-Pitts, joining us to be a part of the conversation we have here. I'm Joseph, one of your pastors, pastor for connection and digital ministry. That's sort of a new thing in this era of changing into the vision process, and we're so delighted to welcome you here to have this conversation and to listen in. Today, we're talking about the vision process itself and how we got here, but also leaning into this part of the connection. Connecting is one of our big things in our vision statement, where we're going to become a more inclusive community, experiencing transformation in Jesus Christ. In order to do that, Oak Grove is going to do three main things: connect with each other, grow in our faith, and live out our faith in the world and beyond. And so we're delighted to have Pastor Beth here.
It's great to be with you.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It feels good to say that. It's sort of nice. Before we get into some of the things about the vision process and that, tell us some about you. Who are you, Pastor Beth, and how did you get here?
I used to laughingly say to whoever asked that question, I was born in a small log cabin that I helped my father build. But I was born in Athens, Georgia. I grew up in Athens. My dad came to teach at the University of Georgia in the pharmacy school. I was the fourth of their four children. And as I've told many other people, I was raised in the Catholic Church because my dad was Roman Catholic, and my mother was the daughter of a United Methodist pastor from South Carolina. Yeah. And in order for them to be married and for Dad to remain a member of the Catholic Church, they had to promise that all of their children would be raised in the Catholic Church. And I went to the Catholic Church until I joined the Methodist Church, where my mother attended when I was 14. Yeah. I moved my membership to the Methodist Church because I was about 12 when I realized I wanted the job that the priest had.
Yeah.
And that job was not open to me as a girl. I knew there were women who worked in the church. There were nuns who worked at St. Joseph's from the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters, but I knew that I didn't have a calling to become a nun. I knew that just wasn't me. So I started going to both churches and eventually transferred to First Methodist.
All right. So after you were a part of both Roman Catholicism and Methodism and became officially just Methodist at that point, tell us how you ended up being, in pastoral work, and tell us some about your family as well.
After I joined the Methodist Church, I talked to the pastor who was there at the time, who was Cecil Myers, and he heard that I was interested in going to the ministry and started giving me little jobs doing things. I played the piano for the third grade choir. Awesome. That was a hoot when I was in high school. I visited folks in the nursing home, and he referred me to the lay speakers program. So I was about 16 when I started as a lay speaker. And lay speakers were lay people who were trained to deliver a sermon and to go to one of the churches where there were more than one church on a circuit. And so some churches wouldn't have a preacher on a Sunday. And so our district had a program where no church should be without a preacher on a Sunday during Lent or Advent. And so I would go out on Sunday morning when I had my driver's license. I would go out to little country churches in the middle of nowhere to deliver what I'm sure was a brilliant and well-constructed sermon written by a 16-year-old.
I'm sure even 16-year-old Beth had some pretty awesome sermons. But carry on.
I have them all in a folder, and I can't bear to look at them anymore. I went to undergraduate school at Duke, where I majored in religion. Because of a course that I took at Duke, which had shared faculty from Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Chicago, I got to know some of the faculty there and decided maybe I'd like to go to school in Evanston, which is just north of Chicago. And so that's where I went to seminary. When I graduated, it was 1984, I believe. And I came and took my first appointment in the North Georgia Conference, which was the Bishop Circuit, which included Bishop and Farmington and High Shoals and Salem. Those were my first four churches. Yeah, so I was first ordained or commissioned, as we would say, in 1983 while I was still a seminary student, and then served 3 years at the Bishop Circuit. And then I went to get a PhD in Old Testament.
Yeah.
That's where I met Mark. We were both in graduate school up there. When I was almost finished with my PhD, we took an appointment at Athens First. I was the associate at my home church for 3 years. Finished my dissertation while I was there. Mark was working on his also. And then we moved to Durham, where I went to work for Duke Divinity School. I taught at Duke Divinity School for 6 years.
That's pretty cool. And you were teaching Hebrew Bible, among other things?
I taught Hebrew language. I taught Hebrew Bible. I also taught some classes related to archaeology because of having been involved in Duke's archaeological program.
And so after you were at Duke, you came back into the North Georgia Conference over this way. And then tell us, like I said, you joined the Oak Grove staff fairly recently in geologic time space, but tell us some about that as well.
I worked for 2 years as the associate at Snellville United Methodist Church.
Okay.
And then an opening arose at Watkinsville First Methodist, and I loved that congregation. We had a lot of fun. I was there for 6 years at Watkinsville, and then I was at a meeting at the conference office, and Bishop Watson said, "Can I talk to you in my office?" And I thought, "Oh boy, he's going to ask me to do the conference Bible study." And he came in and he said, "Would you be willing to move to St. Mark United Methodist in Atlanta?" And I was flabbergasted because I had said I would return to Watkinsville. The people thought I was returning. It was March. I had never considered moving from Watkinsville, but St. Mark is an unusual congregation in that it has a majority LGBTQ congregation. And I was one of the conference's pastors, not the only one by any means, but I was one of the conference pastors who was known to love that community and who would welcome a chance to be their pastor. And so even though it meant leaving a congregation I really loved and enjoyed, I was conflicted about leaving, but excited about coming to Atlanta in a new place. The kids were not immediately miserable about it. They took about 6 months before they expressed how miserable they were about moving. But we moved to Atlanta in 2010. The kids were going into middle school. So I was at St. Mark as pastor for 10 years. I was surprised to get a call at the end of October to be asked if I would follow Glenn here to Oak Grove. Glenn Etheridge, my predecessor, and I were good friends. We were in continuing education group together. And I thought about it for a few more hours, and then I texted back, if my being in this move chain would allow Glenn and Kathy to stay in their house until Kathy finishes the school year, I would certainly be part of it.
Yeah, and that was during the time when Pastor Glenn, our pastor emeritus, former pastor, had pancreatic cancer and was going through all those treatments. That's where the Etheridge Inclusive Playground comes from he and Kathy and their vision to have a playground for kids with disabilities and their friends to play. But also, much beloved friend, colleague, and for me, a mentor and someone who's been a guiding influence in my life. I still question, what would Glenn do about this? Sometimes it gives me courage. Sometimes it holds me back in a helpful way. But I think that's part of, that's all helpful in thinking about how you're here now as our senior pastor and your work and responsibilities to cohere us and to lead us and help us figure out sort of the next steps of things.
Yeah. So I showed up in January of 2020 and closed the church in March of 2020 because of the pandemic. That was a challenge. Yeah. But I was so proud of everybody here and the way that people adjusted to things they clearly did not like and didn't want to have to do, but we all understood. I was so fortunate in the collective wisdom of the laity here and the gifts of all the staff here to help us keep the vital ministries that needed to continue going, to continue to support our partners in ministry who rely upon us, to continue to be able to have fellowship and have worship and have meaningful impact on our community during those terrible, uncertain times. We really benefited from the wisdom and advice of key lay leadership in this church to help Oak Grove survive and thrive in situations that severely challenged other churches that were not as fortunate as we are.
Yeah, and we have that great privilege of being a church and people who serve in churches who sort of know what's happening in the conference and otherwise. But also, it's true. I think we did weather that storm better than many, if not most. Right. And again, that's a huge thing for our lay people and for our church staff as well, and for you. You're leading us. Coming out of the pandemic, we entered into the season of a vision process for the church. And that's part of what we're here to talk about today and talking about the new vision we have for the church and for our community over the next 5 years, and wanting to do all these things. And the first part of that is connect. But before we get into talk about connect, I did want to ask you some about the vision process itself
Right.
and some of the people on it, and just some of a couple of takeaways and things you saw and appreciated from that process.
Well, y'all had a vision process here at Oak Grove that was about to come to the end of its term.
Yeah.
Most vision processes,
10 years?
I think it was a
10-year,
10-year plan. And so that 10-year plan was set to run out in 2023. And so it was time to have a focus, because a vision plan, part of me always says, we have a vision, we're a church.
We should do what churches do.
Yes, churches have a
Sure.
plan, But at the same time, there's so many different ways, so many different directions that we could go in ministry, so many things we could specialize in or emphasize, that we really wanted to hear from the congregation about where they felt the next chapter was. What did they feel like they were being called to be most active in the next 5 years? In the past, one of the things that was a part of the vision was the construction of the building that we're currently sitting in.
Literally sitting in
this
right
half
now.
of the building, right, was not here. Was finished in 2016. And I was just saying to somebody the other day, it's really wonderful to be working on implementing the vision that is not centered around a capital campaign to build something physical.
Sure.
I'd had several of those at St. Mark. I'd had a big one at Watkinsville. And it's nice to have a vision process where what you're focusing on is programs and ministries and activities that we will do together. And so we gathered a team. I sought out the advice of Blair Boyd-Sant, who works for the annual conference, who does this kind of vision process for other groups, because frankly, it's not in my skill set necessarily to design a process like this. And she helped me to call the leadership of that team. Jonathan Merrill seemed a natural choice for chair of that committee. We also had insight and feedback from people who had been on previous vision programs here, like Kathy Huffines, who'd been on some of the previous ones, gave me some wisdom and information about that. And so we started talking with Jonathan, and then we also started gathering other lay people to be part of the team. We tried to get people of all ages, youth, young adults, regular adults, senior adults, men, women, people from various cultural backgrounds. We wanted the committee not to be too huge, but at the same time, we wanted it to be representative of the folks in the church. Some folks who did go to modern worship, some people who do go to traditional worship. So we wanted to have a good representation, a cross-section of the congregation to be that visioning team. And we were really fortunate in the leadership that came forward for that. And so we spent about a year, maybe not a whole year, about a year, talking about how to get the information from the congregation to use in our work. A survey was developed, a process of having larger community meetings where people talk together on Wednesday night or on Sunday afternoon. The youth got together and talked about what they wanted for the future of their church. Even the children in the elementary Sunday school rooms got together and developed things that they thought were important. We got also feedback from people who are not members of the church, who were members of our community. And that was important for us as well, to get a sense of what was on the heart of most of the congregation for what they wanted for Oak Grove for the future. There were 4 ideas, basically. One was, we want to be connected to one another. The pandemic made us all feel disconnected. We want to reconnect with people. We want to connect with new people. We want to connect with each other, because disconnection had been such an issue and such a problem. So we wanted to feel that connection between people. We also wanted to give people an opportunity to grow. One of the things the church talks about a lot is the subject of discipleship. And that's a churchy word, which basically means, you walk into a church as your ordinary human being. What changes about you after you join a church and become involved in the church? And the traditional way of describing what happens to someone as they gradually become more and more of a Christian individual, that they are becoming a disciple. And the Methodist motto, the Methodist vision or mission statement of the denomination is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So What does that mean? Basically, it means that we want people to have an opportunity to grow in their faith, to learn new things, to try new things, to explore their spiritual gifts, to use the gifts that God has given them to live as a faithful Christian. And that gives you the third kind of idea that we had, which is that it's always been important for Methodists not just to keep their faith inside the church on Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
Right. Put it in a box, bring it out on Sunday, then put it back in. We want folks to feel confident to live their life as a Christian in the world, in a place where people need help, where people need connection, or where people are looking for someone to partner with them so they can offer their gifts. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways for us to be a good neighbor in our neighborhood and a positive influence in our community. And so the idea of the third emphasis of living out our faith in the world is to empower people here from Oak Grove to really make a difference in our neighborhood, in our community, in our city, by being not just good citizens, but good neighbors, and to be that kind of force for good that we believe God wants us to be in the world. The fourth emphasis we also had a hard time articulating this. We wanted also to emphasize in these three areas the idea of being an inclusive community, meaning having a mind for who is not here with us. Are we making it equally easy for folks to come and be with us? We think of that in terms of physical barriers that might keep kids with wheelchairs from playing on our playground. Sure. And so the idea of building an inclusive playground was so that all children could come and play. And the church should also be that kind of community where we get rid of the barriers to participation that people might have. So we wanted to have inclusivity as a sort of a guiding principle when we're doing all of our other connecting things, growing things, living things. And we wanted to do all of those things with an eye toward, are we making it possible? Are we making it easy for folks to come and be with us, or for us to engage with people outside of the church? So those were the sorts of goals and values that the community serviced through the conversations and through the surveys, and the committee, through the able help of the computer wonks in the group, to crush all the data into a usable form. We got a lot of really wonderful data points, which we sort of sifted so that the ones that were said by the most people kind of rose to the surface as the primary things that we would work on.
Yeah. And then out of that came sort of this document we have that is sort of the main things that came out of each of these three areas, with that thread of inclusivity running throughout, and being inclusive in all the ways it means in our world. Today, our podcast topic is Connect. We got another episode of Connect coming next week with Carrie White, and then we'll talk about Grow for 2 weeks, and we'll talk about Live for 2 weeks. Right. That'll be sort of the season for this podcast until we make our way all the way to Advent eventually. That's going to come, but it'll be a minute. So to get back to the Connect part of it, there were some tangible things that the committee and the vision process came out with, and they said they wanted us as church staff and church community leaders to create. And so we've got some of those things that are rolling, like this podcast. Sure, literally came about as a result of the bullet point number 2, wanting to have more digital ministry opportunities and ways for people to connect with their faith, grow in their faith, and live out their faith in digital means. And so, thank you, Vision Team, for the podcast. But what are some other things that we've been working on our sort of short, medium, and long runways?
One of the things that we talked about was the pandemic gave us an opportunity coming out of it to think of, what did we have to start doing differently during the pandemic that weren't necessarily bad things? Like, for instance, we started live streaming the traditional service. We had live streaming capability in modern worship before the pandemic. Yeah. But because we had so many people who wanted to connect with traditional worship by live streaming, we, through generosity of the lay people, got the cameras and the equipment to live stream traditional worship. And we discovered that there were many people who had connected with us through the digital means of live streaming the services, who had never physically walked through the doors of the sanctuary. And since then, several of those families have joined us.
Yeah, a couple weeks back, we had a family they joined the church and had a child baptized on a Sunday. The first time I'd ever been in the church building is when I met with them on a Wednesday before,
That's right.
and met them, and they were so excited about it and
Hmm.
looking forward to joining the church and having their kid baptized on the Sunday, and they'd literally never ever been in the building. That's
Right.
the third or fourth family that I've had direct contact with that
Right.
has done that, and the power of that is it's that connection part.
Hmm.
Also, one of the things I love about our streaming systems, shout out to Taylor Penley on all this, by the
For
way,
sure.
the guru of all things who installed the whole system and helps make it all run smoothly in the sanctuary
Right.
and in the Fellowship Hall for Modern, as well as our AV team volunteers. I'm always recruiting, so if you're interested in that, reach out to Joseph.
Yeah.
But a big part of our ministry and work is both weddings and funerals, as
Mhm.
well as every day, every week worship services. So our funerals, for example, when folks can't be in town for a
Yes.
funeral, it's there. It's on YouTube. And for friends who's having their kids baptized and their families in Colombia, well, they can
Mhm.
just send them the link, and the family can watch it live in
Right.
Colombia, and then also watch it later if they missed it. There's
It's a
something really powerful about that.
It's a gift that we can offer to people that we were not able to offer before. We just simply hadn't thought down those lines. Now, anytime there's a funeral, we tell the folks, we can give you this link. Your homebound family members who can't come to the funeral can come now. We also have homebound members of the church who are able to participate in worship every Sunday because they can put it on their television sets, and they tell us how much they appreciate that and how
Yeah.
much they love that. And so much of that work we realized needed to continue after the pandemic was over, because it gave us a different way to be inclusive. It gave us a way of including
Yeah.
people who could not physically be with us, and it opened our minds to the different people we were connecting with in that way, that we could connect with more if we continued to have more emphasis put into digital work. One of the things the Vision Committee identified was our whole communications process.
Sure.
Church communication is a punchline.
Yeah.
Every pastor has a T-shirt that says, "You should know about it. It was in the bulletin for 6 weeks."
It was in the bulletin, on the website, and on the e-news.
Yes.
Yeah.
We always wanted to communicate better with
Sure.
everybody in the congregation. So one of the things that came out of the vision process was that we needed to have someone assess our communications processes. So we have engaged a communications expert who's doing an audit for us, working on helping us do better at our communications task. That's a major thing that's already underway. We also took a look at the groups that were connecting with us and those that weren't. And always in most churches, young adults who have graduated from our youth group and who have gone on either to work or they've gone to
Sure.
college, oftentimes are disconnected or become disconnected from their home church. And frankly, a lot of churches just kind of give up on making contact with them. They assume, oh, they're in college, they're at a Wesley Foundation, but they aren't always.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that's only because you used to be a campus minister.
Speaking as a former college minister at Emory, I think it's absolutely true.
Mhm. And so right now, CJ, our youth minister in Atticus, who is the director of modern worship, are teaming up to gather a group of young adults who've started to meet during the summer, and they're kind of piloting some fellowship opportunities. So one of the things the Vision Committee said is we want to reconnect with our young adult members. And so I think they had a gathering of about 30.
Yeah, so
their young.
and if you go on the church
That's
website
great.
And our social media, you can find information about the young adult gatherings and that sort of thing. There's
Mm-hmm.
some new small groups that are springing up from them, as well as from other groups as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And another group that Joseph had been planning on gathering for a new Sunday school class were parents with little children, parents with very young children.
Yeah.
Every few years, you need to offer that so that when people come out of the fog of having an infant at home and realize, I want to see people my age, I want to talk to an adult. We had a really critical mass of couples with little children who have now been organized by Joseph into a new Sunday school class, which is great.
Remarkable class. And it's funny, having a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old, I know their life.
Yes.
And on our church staff, we talk a lot about how that's important to have pastors and staff and people at different ages and stages. Pastor Beth and Pastor Amy and I laugh because we sort of cover a large spectrum between our ages and our stages,
Right.
but also in the people that interact with us. One of the brilliance of the Methodist Church system in having elders and deacons, elders are go where they're sent,
Mhm.
but we have a really nice way of having different types of people you can connect with at the church.
Right.
And that's a huge part of what we do in ministry, but also makes it absolutely important to have amazing lay leadership, which our
Mhm.
church does. And the vision
Certainly.
process only further exemplified that and showed
Right.
that in their leadership, but also in the work they are doing.
Yeah, one of the other things that was raised in the subject of connection was making sure that we had touched base with folks who disappeared during the pandemic,
Sure.
either because they moved away, and we didn't want anyone to feel unwanted or like the church didn't notice that they
Sure.
had stopped coming. And in many cases, in most cases, we know where folks are and we understand why they've moved somewhere else or are somewhere else, but we continually try to make a good faith effort to make sure that we haven't simply overlooked folks who aren't with us. For instance, it's quite common for people who had an age and stage issue in common with other people at the church, like say all of their kids were in the youth group.
Mm.
It's quite common for classes of adults who formed because all of their kids were in the youth group to sort of scatter and drift apart when their kids go off to college and aren't doing activities together.
Sure.
And we want to make sure that we haven't simply overlooked people whose reason for being in a class together maybe doesn't exist now, but there could be new reasons. We're looking in the fall also to help reconstitute some small group fellowship.
And you can find more information about this on the church website. Again, we're recording this before all of this, but the big part about it is after Labor Day, we have Disciple Bible Study classes coming online.
Mhm.
We have, as well as some new small groups happening. And you can find all this stuff on the church website at ogumc.org/news. Is the easiest place to find all the things, or on the church social media accounts.
So when you think about the issue of connection and how you connect with people in your church, all of us can probably look back at, when did I start coming to church here? Who did I first connect with? I think of one person who joined the church during the pandemic said he was encouraged to join the church by the people who sat around him in the pews on Sunday morning. And they were very, very anxious to welcome him and to help him feel connected to the church. And it was because they were sitting next to him on Sunday morning and saw him as a visitor. And that was his connection. There are other people I've heard from, folks like Bill Widmeyer, who told me the other day at a barbecue meeting that he got connected here at Oak Grove because he volunteered for a work team for the Oak Grove barbecue, which happens on the third Saturday of October every year. This year, October 21st.
Put it in your calendars, y'all.
Put it in your calendar. And that's how he got to know a group of guys. They worked together on that project. That's one of the reasons why the barbecue is so dear to his heart, because that's where he first met the group he connected to.
Yeah.
Some people connect through a Sunday school class. Other people connect because they volunteered for something like Feed My Starving Children, or they volunteered to work on Spooky to Be Hungry, or they went on a mission trip. A lot of people also forget that musical groups at the church are a fantastic way to connect with other people. If you say to yourself, I don't sing, that is not an impediment. John Cowden will give you a handbell. Scott Stewart will give you a drum. Lots of people connect through the drama ministry, through the music ministry, through working in the children's department, the youth department. There are just so many different ways that you can connect with other people in small groups that you wouldn't necessarily think to yourself, oh, the chancel choir is a small group. But it is. The Tuesday afternoon choir is a small group, musical ensemble. So the term small group can really be applied to any group of people doing a thing together at the church. So don't limit your thinking as to what a small group is. There are all kinds of groups of various sizes where you can connect with other people. So giving people opportunities to connect with other members is part of what we're trying to emphasize through that connect pathway.
Yeah, and the one other thing I would add is Wednesday night dinners here at the church.
Yes.
Y'all, if you like good, amazing cooking, Chef Allison is an amazing chef and a remarkable human. But she and her team make and transform food from mere food to delightful meals. And it's a meal I don't have to cook or clean.
Right.
So we have folks in the neighborhood who are not church members who just come for dinner,
Yes.
and we'd love for you to come.
Yeah.
And we have church members who come. And that is another place where people find those connection points of sitting at a table with people you didn't know, and now you do. And then you'll see them sort of everywhere.
Right.
So there's definitely a lot of ways we connect as a church.
We have developed a guidebook, which you can get a physical copy of, and that will have a matching web page with more sign-up information in it. But the purpose of the guidebook is to give people some ideas. There'll be a list of things you can do that can help you connect with other people, and you can pick some out of that and try them. There's another section that will list growth opportunities, classes you could take. There's another section for how you can live your faith in the world. And you'll find that not everybody is going to sign up for a Bible study. That is not everybody's thing.
Sure,
right.
Sure.
Not everybody is going to do a mission work project. That's not everybody's thing.
Yeah.
Every individual person is different with regard to what it is they do that gives them meaning, that makes them feel a part of a church family. We have folks at Oak Grove who have spearheaded the same volunteer project for years because it's the volunteer project they love and want to give their time to. And there are other folks who just love a Bible study and are going to sign up for every Bible study there is. And we're hoping that people will take advantage of all these opportunities, not just as an opportunity to grow by studying something, but when you join a small group for study, you also have an opportunity to connect with the people in the group.
Yeah.
And you can meet people and get a group of friends and acquaintances at the church by doing any number of those things, whether it's a study group, a small group for support, or coming to a certain table for Wednesday night supper, or coming to Wednesday night communion, or helping with the blessing bags that we assemble for school kids, which are bags of food that school kids from Montclair Elementary can take home at the end of the week if their families are food insecure. We assemble a bag full of non-perishable food. That happens every Wednesday night. And there are groups of people who do that together every Wednesday night and bring their little children, and their kids can help to do that. It's a great intergenerational family project, and you get to know other people in the church who also do that. So you can connect in any number of ways, and we're trying to offer as wide a variety as we can of different ways to connect with people, hoping that more people will feel drawn to do that.
Yeah, and I think part of what is helpful for us as church staff and community leaders is that we have all these programmatic ways to connect, but there's also all these ways that we just naturally connect with people. If you're out on the playground and you see any of us, say hi, A, B. You can always ask questions of someone. You can say hello to someone. Being available to the ways that God might be working, even through that relationship of asking someone how they're doing. I mean, these are all the ways that we connect as people of faith, both internally as a church, but also in how we grow and live out our faith. It's all kind of right there together in many ways.
It's funny how you figure out that you have a connection with somebody that you didn't realize you had a connection to. The more you talk with people and exchange life data points with folks, you find out connections you never knew existed.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think part of what's beautiful about the connect part of this for our vision statement is it really helps us to think intentionally about it and find ways to do it. And Beth has listed off a ton of ways, from worship to midweek dinner to all the different projects and groups we have going. So please do go check those out on the church website, as well as you can find the guidebook at ogumc.org/guidebook, and a way to check out all the things that are happening and ways you can sort of tick those boxes to complete as many of those as you can. And
we're trying to decide if we're going to have a prize, for whoever checks them boxes.
Whoever gets them all filled out. It'll probably be a youth, let's be honest.
Yes.
But it's a part of that way that we are encouraged to find connection, as well as having sort of a roadmap of how we do that as a church. If we as pastors, or Pastor Amy or other staff people, will be helpful for you in that process to be sort of a guide along your journey, reach out to us. We'll be glad to do that. But also just glad to have you with us, as always, the Reverend Dr. Beth LaRocca-Pitts. And thanks for being here.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Well, thank you, Pastor Beth, for being with us. Thank you all for watching and listening. Again, you can find the podcast anywhere you find podcasts in general, but specifically, I'd encourage you to go watch it either in video form or listen on Spotify. You can also find it on Apple Podcasts. You can also watch a video version of this on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/OGUMC. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next Tuesday morning when the next episode drops and our second part of our conversation about Connect as we explore the church vision process with Carrie White coming up. Well, again, I'm Joseph, Pastor Beth. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you the next time. Peace.